Yesterday, we talked about how to put your grid on your photo. And the whole point of this method is that we're making a grid on the photo, and then we're going to make a similar grid on the drawing paper, and we're going to basically translate this photo into a drawing box by box by box. Okay? So our goal is, however many boxes we have on the photo, we need at least that many boxes on the drawing paper, right? Okay, now there's a couple different ways we can do that math. I did not finish this grid from the demo yesterday, but it's a 1-inch grid, and the paper is 8.5 inches by 11 inches, so we can assume that it would be 8.5 boxes by 11 boxes in that grid, correct? So that means our drawing paper needs to be at least 8.5 boxes across by 11 boxes tall. You all on the same page with me so far? Okay, if you get lost, speak up so I can help. There's a couple ways we can do this math, okay? One of the ways is we can measure the paper, which is going to be 18 inches by 24 inches. I should have gotten a longer ruler. Can somebody go get me a yardstick, please? We can divide 18 by the 8.5 that we need. That would give us a number that would say how many or how big those boxes would have to be in order to fit 8.5 of them. And then we could double check that and make sure that that same, thank you, that same size would also fit 11 boxes into 24. That's one way of doing it, okay? We can also, real world math here, right, we can estimate. So we know that for most of us, our photo is about the size of this piece of paper, right? And we know that this piece of paper fits approximately twice in each direction on this drawing paper, right? So for most of us, we can do what's considered a 2 times enlargement. We can make our drawing twice as large as our original source photo. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody yet? Okay. If you are, this is where you have some choice now. If you are a quicker drawer, things go pretty quick for you, then a 2 times enlargement is going to be about, it's going to mean you're going to end up with a drawing about the size of this paper. It's an enlargement, right? It's going to be pretty big. If you are a little bit slower drawer, or you struggle with deadlines and you want to kind of stack the deck in your favor to give yourself maybe a little bit less challenge, a little bit less size at least to manage, what would also be acceptable would be a 1.5 times enlargement instead of a 2 times enlargement. Okay, so your drawing would end up being 1.5 times the original source size, not the full 2 times as big. Okay, so for today, I'm going to do a 1.5 times enlargement. Okay, if you wanted to do a 2 times enlargement, you could do that also. So let's just say, for hypothetical example's sake, right? If my grid boxes on my photo are 1 inch, and I do a 2 times enlargement on my drawing paper, how big would those boxes be on the drawing paper? 2 inches. Because you would have the size of the boxes on here times 2 for a 2 times enlargement, right? So if they're 1 inch on here, you would be making 2-inch boxes on here. Okay? Now your math might be a little different if you didn't do a 1-inch grid on your photo. If you did instead like a 1/2-inch grid, or if you did a 3/4-inch grid, then you're multiplying that by the 2 times. Okay? For a 1.5 times enlargement, we're going to take these 1-inch boxes and multiply them by 1.5, which is 1.5. Yeah, 1 times 1.5 is 1.5. So for my demo today, and what I think most of you are probably going to do, is a 1.5-inch grid. Okay? So we need to remember our process from yesterday. We're going to start at the top of our paper. We're going to make sure this ruler is parallel. Okay, now I can see where the 0 mark is. If you have a ruler that does not have a reliable 0 mark, you're going to start at the 1 instead. Okay, that's always a safe way to do it. So if you're not sure, just start at the 1. All right, I'm going to make a 1.5-inch grid. So I'm counting 1.5 inches, and then I'll make a mark. okay? And then I'm going an inch from this half and a half. And then I'm making a mark, okay? So an inch and a half, an inch and a half, inch and a half, inch and a half, inch and a half. Am I losing anybody? We all on the same page?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going all the way across, okay? We know that I'm only doing a 1.5 times enlargement, so it's not gonna take the whole paper, but I am going to grid the whole paper, and you'll see why later, okay? Now, what is our rule here? When I'm done with this, what do I have to do so that I don't screw it up?
Do it on the bottom.
I have to do it on the bottom, and in order to do that, I have to do what?
Just pull it straight down.
Just pull it straight down. Just slide it straight down. That's really important. It's going to be so tempting for you to pick up the paper and turn it over. That's going to screw you up. Don't do that, okay? So make sure your ruler is straight. Make sure you're lined up on that edge. Inch and a half, inch and a half, inch and a half, inch and a half. Okay? I'm going fast for the sake of the demo. You are going to be very slow and precise, oops, and careful. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, now I have measurement markings on the bottom, and I have measurement markings at the top, so now what do I have to do?
Connect them.
I have to connect them. Here's another part where people mess up. Okay, I need to double check and make sure that my marks look like they line up. Okay, so in this case, I ended up with a perfect inch and a half on both sides. Okay, so that's pretty ideal, honestly. If you ended up with a fraction on one side, that's okay. You just want to make sure that your fraction ends up on the same side. If it's not, then your grid isn't going to work. Okay, so have somebody double check your work first. I'm going to line up. I'm going to put my pencil on the mark, slide the ruler up to it, slide the ruler up to the other side. Okay, I need to remind myself that I have to draw very lightly. I'm barely pressing at all. I'm kind of just letting gravity do the work of that pressure. Why do I want my grid on this paper to be very light?
Because we're going to erase it.
Because you're going to erase it eventually. Yeah. And if you make this grid too heavy, then it's not going to erase fully, and that's going to be stuck in your final drawing. Okay? So make your grid as light as you can possibly manage it without, not being able to see it entirely, because you do need to be able to see the grid. That's kind of the main part of why we're doing this. Okay? Does that make sense? A double check that you can also do is to count your number of boxes. So I have 8.5 boxes across on here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes? You need at least 8.5. I have more than that. That's okay. That's good. That means we have a couple extra. That's good. And then you'll do the same thing across. So I'm going to put my ruler, right? Make your same 1.5 inch grid, slide it down, make the same measurements on the bottom, draw your lines, count your boxes, make sure you have at least as many as you have on your photo, on your drawing paper, and then you'll have a full grid. Does that make sense? Okay, question?
Also, how did you get 1.5?
I got 1.5, that's a good question, because my choices for how big are either to do a 2 times enlargement or a 1.5 times enlargement. A 2 times enlargement means that most of our paper is going to be full of drawing. If we do a little bit less than that to make it a little bit quicker and more manageable, we're going to do a 1.5 times enlargement instead of a 2 times enlargement. So it'll fill a little less of the paper. It won't be quite as big. Does that make more sense now? That's a really good question. Anyone else? Questions? Okay, your goal is, and some of us might not be there yet, and that's okay, but we're working towards that to get caught up. Our goal is that by the end of today, you want to have a photo with a grid and a drawing paper with a grid. And you need at least as many boxes on the paper as you have on the photo. Questions? All right, then you guys can get to work.